So hello, Josie. How you doing?
Good.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. At least one person is like delightedly happy that you're making this presentation. They were just asking earlier. While you bring up your slides, I'll read out your introduction. So Josie Gaillard is a Menlo Park Environmental Quality Commissioner. Her presentation today is how to electrify your life without upsizing your utility service. Josie is working with Menlo Park's city staff and city council to address climate change, preserve our urban forest, and build a sustainable future for all residents. She strives to see possibilities and connections where others don't and inspire people to tackle hard problems, even when others say they can't be solved. Her current passion is working to solve climate change. Welcome, Josie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, so Sean asked me to speak on upsizing your utility, how to electrify without upsizing your utility service. And for those of you who've seen me present already on this, I'm going to try to go quickly through the material because I realize I'm presenting to a lot of industry experts. So
but there's a whole bunch of people from around the country on this that haven't seen you present before. So
okay.
For those who have, they'll just get a re-education, but you know, the other people who haven't, this is really important stuff.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll go through electrification basics, some barriers or perceived barriers, showing how much space we actually have on our electrical panels and in our utility service coming from the utility. We'll go through an example and look at some what we call silver bullets in achieving electrification, and then some opportunities for new solutions. Okay, so in the spirit of just a refresher for those new to electrification or already experienced with electrification, and for those who are new, we're defining electrification as addressing all of the gas or fossil fuel uses in the home. So that would be heating, water heating, cooking, drying, typically, at least here in California. And then we also define it in the work that Tom Cabot and I do. And by the way, all of this is based on really work that Tom Cabot has done. And I'm sort of being mentored by him on all of this. But so we also define electrification as including the car, because if we're going to get to a sustainable future, then everyone needs to have access to some form of mobility that doesn't contribute to the climate problem. Sorry, going back to this one, it can also include solar and battery, although it doesn't need to. Solar obviously helps bring costs down, and batteries can help make an all-electric home more reliable during power outages. Okay, so some barriers today. There's a lot of misperceptions out there, like if I'm going to get off of fossil fuels, can the grid handle it? Do I have to upsize my electrical panel? How much is it going to cost? Misperceptions that they will absolutely have to upsize their electrical panel is a major one, and that can add to the cost. So I'm here to tell you that if you have a 100 amp service or more, then you can absolutely fully electrify without upsizing your panel. You have to be a little bit creative in some cases if you have some exceptional loads, but it's absolutely doable. And then, of course, we all know the fossil fuel industry is just planting a lot of sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that we have to kind of overcome. But so I'm going to focus now on avoiding the potentially $3,000 to $7,000 or more that that utilities can charge for upsizing, or that someone can incur if they're trying to upsize their panel. So let's try to avoid that altogether. Okay. So this is a quick graph that I put together showing 10 homes, actually a total of 12 homes, but the 10 on the left are homes involved in a project that Tom Cabot and I are working on for the San Mateo County, where we identified 10 homes across the county. It's a diverse set of homes, different vintages, different square footages, different panel sizes, to get an idea of what would it take to electrify these homes. So all of them currently use fossil fuels in the home for one purpose or another. And the idea is to come up with a plan and see what would it take to electrify. So starting out, most of them have gas furnaces, gas cars, gas, most of them have electric dryers, most of them have gas cooking. So they're mostly gas, but you can see from this graph, the blue here is the part of how much of their panel or their electrical service actually coming from the utility are they currently using on their highest use day across a 12-month period, right? So this is power, so kW or amps. So how much of that service line capacity are they using? You can see that they have, they're only using, max of about 36% of their panel capacity for the one home on the far left. And, in the case of the most frugal user of electricity, it's more like 11% on the right there. So the point here is all of that green bar is headroom. That's all space on the service line that is not being used currently, their electrical service line, that if they electrify, they can move right into that space. So that's a ton of space actually on an electrical panel or on a service line. The home, so those 10 homes on the left are not yet electric. The two on the right are my home and Tom's home actually, which are nearly fully electric. Mine includes an EV, but does not include a hot water heater yet, electric hot water heater. And then Tom's includes the hot water heater, but not the EV yet. But you can see even in a fully electric home that across a 12-month period, neither of us is using anywhere close to our full capacity of our panel or our service line. So this is really important because it's a huge misperception. When we present or talk to people, this includes policymakers, this includes contractors, this includes industry professionals. The perception is that we're all already using most of our panel or most of our service line. And so how could we add anything new to it? So I just want to make the point that we have a ton of space on our electrical panels and on our service lines. And actually back on this one, I just wanted to mention that most of these panels are 100 amp panels. We had one 60 amp panel and we had one 125 amp panel and one 200 amp panel in the study. Okay, so there are two ways to do NEC calculation methods. And there's, Tom and I gave a 3-hour class with PG&E in December on this topic, which if you go to PG&E's training center, you can find. It's online now. And so it obviously goes in a lot more detail about how to do these load calcs. But I just wanted to make the point that there are two basic methods in the NEC, the National Electrical Code, that that we tend to use when electrifying an existing home. So the method on the left is 220.83b, and that is what I'll call a bottoms up calculation. It says go around the home, find all the nameplate ratings for the existing equipment, and then apply certain coincidence factors to each piece of equipment or each type of equipment, and then add in the equipment you'd like to add and see how close to your full panel capacity you come. And anything under, for example, if I have a 100 amp panel, anything under a 100 amp panel, when you add up your totals, if you're under 100 amps, you're good. So the method on the right, 220.87, and the graph I'm showing on the left is actually my home. The graph on the right is also my home. So the point here is you can use two different calculation methods and come up with two pretty different answers. The one on the left, you can see that if I use 220.83b on my house, it shows that I'm pretty much at capacity, right? I've got my baseload kilowatts assigned, and then I've got my pool pump, dryer, range, and it looks like I'm pretty much maxing out on my capacity because it's up to 100%. Over on the right, you can see that if I use 220.87, I still have a lot of headroom. So how does 220.87 works? It looks at historical electric loads on your from your utility bill. So taking either 15-minute increments or 1-hour increments, it looks at what is the energy usage over that period, and then we use we assume that roughly reflects what the power maximum would be over that period, and that enables us to figure out over a 12-month period, what was the maximum of your panel that you used? So in my case, it was just shy of 30% over the last 12 months. So that says that I still have 70% of my panel or my service line that I'm able to use. So you can see that the two methods come up with different answers, and depending on the situation, the code allows you to use one or the other. There are situations where it makes more sense to use 220.83b. I won't go into that now, but I just want to make the point that the code has some flexibility and allows us to use different calculation methods depending on the situation. Okay, so I apologize again for people who've seen these slides, but this is an example of a home that's a part of the county study that I mentioned earlier with the 10 homes across the county. This one is in Redwood City, and it's a 1,900 square foot rancher. It has an existing 100 amp panel, and it was built in the 1960s, which gives you an idea of like the insulation level. Okay, so here we're looking at the what we're calling the watt diet, which is the approach that Tom Cabot developed, and we apply in all of these homes. The idea is if we can avoid a panel upgrade or upsizing, let's try to avoid it. How do we do that? We choose power efficient equipment, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, but again, it helps avoid this potentially $3,000 electric panel and electric service upgrade. That can be much more if there's an underground service wire from the house to the utility pole that can run in the $20,000 range. So some people just are willing to pay the $3,000 or $4,000 to upsize the panel, and others say, especially when the cost was higher, I'll do anything to avoid that. So it turns out it's not hard to avoid. So here are some of the products, and all of these can be found, by the way, in Redwood Energy's wonderful guides for existing buildings. So here on the left, we have the existing 50-gallon gas tank water heater, which was located in the garage. That's perfect situation for replacing that with a heat pump water heater. You have to have 700 cubic feet of space around a unitary heat pump water heater, like the one on the right, in order for it to have space to collect heat and put it into the water in the tank. So the one on the right is a Rheem 80-gallon, 15-amp heat pump water heater. It will go in the exact same place, very similar form factor. When we move from gas to electric, heat pump electric, we're recommending that people upsize the tank because the recovery time on the tank is slower for a heat pump. So this is a four-person family with young kids. So we're foreseeing, baths and showers, and et cetera, for everybody. And so we, again, are recommending people go up at least one size, in some cases 2 sizes, as is the case here and in the tank size. So here's the space heating and cooling situation. Today, this house has a furnace, which is on the left side of the page, but the right photo. It's in an interior closet, and they had an existing compressor for an air conditioning that's then the refrigerant line runs into the furnace inside. So the furnace is an air handler in the summer when the air conditioning is on, and it's a furnace in the winter when the heat is needed. So we're recommending replacing that with equipment that has a very similar form factor. In this case, it's a Mitsubishi ducted, inverter-driven heat pump HVAC system. And the compressor would go, which is the item on the right, that would go in the same location as the current train compressor. And then the box unit goes exactly where the furnace is. So they would use their existing ductwork in this case. Okay, so cooking. This family had a very fancy gas stove, which is the 48-inch range on the left. They didn't buy it, they bought the house with it in it. And so we had a challenge, which is to look for a similarly sized induction range. We did find one. It's a British company called AGA that makes this one. Interestingly, the price looked very high to me. The price of the unit on the right was $7,000. And I thought, oh, that's pricey. But when I looked at the replacement value of the one on the left, their existing, it was $9,000. So interesting that the fancy induction range actually is a little bit cheaper than the fancy gas range that they have. Here we have their clothes drying situation. So this family actually had an electric resistance clothes dryer already. So people say, oh, well, that's great. They're already electric. The problem is if you're trying to fit everything on a small panel, not a small panel, but a 100 amp panel, you want to make sure you're being as efficient with every amp as you can be. And a resistance dryer is not an efficient use of amps of power. So we recommend them going to this Whirlpool dryer on the right, which is called a hybrid heat pump dryer. It's one of the only ones on the market that's a 7.4 cubic feet, which is the size that Americans are used to. There are many heat pump dryers on the market that are 4.3 cubic feet, which is a size that a smaller family, empty nesters would be fine with, but a larger family that's doing lots of laundry may be a little more challenging. So for this family, we recommended this larger hybrid heat pump dryer, and it only uses 14 amps compared to the one on the right, which is 22.5 amps, their current one.
I'll just put in there that I do have a large family of dirty people because my spouse is a rancher, and so it's super muddy and the rest. We have a 4.5 cubic foot one, and I thought it was perfect. Like, did everything I wanted. And so the argument to go larger, I guess I'm just not an average American, but I'll put it out there that 3 kids and a ranching spouse, we're just fine. Like a whole big loads of 4.5 cubic feet would work for us. But anyway, continue on.
Yes. I've definitely heard that sentiment, and if Americans can change that and get used to the smaller size, I'm all for it. I'm just I want to make sure we have choices for people. So, but it's a good input there from someone who's actually making it work. So that's great. All right. So EV charging, it turns out this is one of the more challenging, pieces of the puzzle when electrifying on an existing panel. There's an instinct when people get an EV charger. One of the challenges of switching from a gas car to an EV is range anxiety. And Tom and I realized that people switching also have to deal with some anxiety around how quickly their charger will be able to charge their car. I think people who have a gas car think the experience is going to be similar to going to a gas station, and they want that experience to be very fast. Whereas in fact, their behavior will change. And if they're charging at home, they will just drive the car home, plug it in, and let it charge overnight. And so it doesn't actually need to be fast. So many people buying an EV will be offered an EV charger that's like 50 amp charger. All right, so on a 100 amp panel, that's like half your panel. We'd like to avoid that. It's not good for the grid. It's not good for your panel sizing, and you really don't need it. So I have a 15 amp car charger, 240 volt 15 amp car charger, and that provides 100 miles of charge per night for my Tesla Model 3. So anyway, this idea that we all need 40 amp car chargers or 50, we don't even need 30 amp car chargers. Most of us need a 15, a 20 amp car charger, and that's plenty. So I'd just like to put that out there. In this case, we recommended this wall box pulsar charger on the left because it can be the amperage can be throttled back by the electrician in a way that it can pass pass inspection as instead of being a full 32 amp charger, it can be as low as a 6 amp charger. In this case, we recommended that the electrician set it at 13 amps, 12.5 amps actually, rated amps, in order to fulfill the load calc to keep it under 100 amps. The budget version of that is this NEMA 6-15 outlet, which I have at my house actually, and it's outside on my the outside of exterior of my garage, and it works just great too, and it's cheaper. So one of the other things that, and this will come up in the silver bullets, that Tom and I employ when we're trying to electrify on an existing panel is these devices that allow you to share a circuit and do that smartly, and also to pause a circuit if, for example, with the DCC9 here in the middle, pause a circuit if the total load in the house is above a certain level. So you could set it to say, if my house is a 100 amp panel, if my house is using 80 amps, shut off my car charger. That's what the DCC9 would do. Very useful. A simple switch would just say, allow me to charge my, plug in my EV charger and my dryer into one 240 volt circuit. In this case, it's hardwired. There's another version of this called the NeoCharge, which you can, I just bought it online and plugged it in. You don't even need an electrician. And it just allows you to share that one 240 volt circuit for, in my case, it's my dryer and my, my EV. On the right, we have an even more elegant solution, which is to replace your panel, your electrical panel, with a smart panel. So in this case, your smart panel becomes like almost like an air traffic controller. So you could program all of your loads such that if you're again, your max capacity, your max panel usage is reaching capacity, it starts to shut off different circuits in a certain order. So if you said, let's say, if everything is on in my house and I'm getting up close to my panel capacity, pause my car charger. And then if that, if that's still not enough, pause my pool pump. So the span.io, again, very elegant solution that runs about $6,000 installed. So it's on the pricier end, but works if you have a really tight situation and you need to get, otherwise you might end up trying to employ like 2 or 3 DCC9s. So the span can make more sense in that situation. Okay, so for this house, we also recommended solar and a battery. The house could take 5.8 kW of rooftop solar with the 100 amp panel, because there is a limit on that. And then a 20 kW battery system for backup situations. They have had these power safety shutoffs, which are common in PG&E territory for fire purposes or to try to avoid wildfire. So they have had power out for days at a time. So that would be a nice improvement in reliability for them. So in order to be able to use the size heat pump space heater that we recommended, they would need to add insulation to their attic and add some insulation to their crawl space, as well as have their ductwork repaired. Their ductwork is very old. Insulation is, as you can see on the right, sort of falling off, so that would need to be repaired. Okay, so that's that house and some of the solutions we employed there. I just want to point out a couple wonderful solutions that we already have. Electrification can be done. Any home in California could be electrified today with the equipment we have today. So I want equipment and the resources that we have today. Some of the resources we have today are, for example, the guide that Redwood Energy has put out with these amazing product lists, this Watt diet approach, and the Redwood Energy has this great panel calculator tool, which is accessible from their website. So we have lots of things to use today to make electrification work. Again, I mentioned this class that Tom Cabot and I just gave through PG&E that's available. So we have lots of education on electric load CALCs. So to be able to use the NEC to its fullest to support electrification. Tom Cabot and I, again, through this county study, we're innovating on how to create an electrification plan. And we're providing those to each of the homeowners and helping kind of streamline the process with contractors, where allowing the homeowner to turn around and give contractors bid packets so that they can bid on their various projects without having, dozens of contractors come through the house for all the different, for a water heater versus a space heater and new circuits, to kind of streamline that process a bit. So this is all, these are all things that are available or emerging. And then we'll get to some things that are not yet available. But so here, again, just a recap of the silver bullets that we have. 15 amp water heaters are really important. The ones that are available, heat pump water heaters that are available, for example, in Home Depot, tend to be 30 amp heat pump water heaters. We like the 15 amp ones. They have a little bit less resistance, sort of backup heating capability. but they enable you to fit on the 100 amp panel. So we prefer those. Inverter driven heat pump HVAC systems today are very common, and they're very quiet. I really like the Mitsubishi. I think they're sort of, tops in the field for innovating on power efficiency, energy efficiency, and noise. These centrally ducted heat pumps, which just drop right into where the furnace is today and use existing ductwork. It's nice for existing homes not to have to run refrigerant lines all over the house, which we find to be more expensive. And then some of the purchase I mentioned earlier, which is like upsizing the water heater when you switch over to heat pump water heater. There's something called a split heat pump water heater where the compressor is outside and the tank is inside. That can be good if the person's heat pump water heater is an interior closet where you don't have that 700 cubic feet of space for the heat pump, the unitary water heater, to collect heat. And then these circuit sharing devices, which I mentioned earlier, the ones listed at the bottom. Okay, so pitfalls to avoid. Try to avoid these big car chargers. If the first thing you do is add a car charger to your house and you do one of these big ones, then you're kind of painting yourself into a corner, because later you want to add a heat pump water heater or heat pump space heater, and you may not have the space on your panel, and you've been sort of forced into doing a panel upsizing. So if you choose right, every step along the way, choose the most power efficient equipment and a smaller EV charger, then you will be set up for success. Don't wait until something fails. If you know you're electrifying, get the circuits pre-wired so that when that water heater fails, you're not waiting for an electrician to install a circuit. All you have to do is have a plumber come out and do the replacement of the water heater. All right. Okay, some solutions that we could use. Again, we have everything we need, but this could make the jobs that Tom and I are doing and helping people electrify even easier. So for example, we could use a heat pump dryer. I think I mentioned this earlier, which is the standard American size, for even fewer watts than the ones that exist on the market today. Even better would be if it was 120 volts. So you could just plug it right into a standard outlet. So this would help the people, especially in California, who have gas dryers, make that conversion over to electric dryers easier. Induction cooktops that use fewer watts. Right now, a 36-inch, which is the larger size induction cooktops, there aren't a lot of choices. They're very high watts. So if we could have something that's a little more power efficient, that would help. That would help us in some tight situations for houses that might just have, need a few extra amps to be able to work on the existing panel. I'm recognizing that I don't have a ton of time, so let's see. I'm gonna skip these. Okay, so maybe I'll take a couple questions if there's a little time.
First of all, I go, woo! Fantastic, Josie. Your intellectual leadership on this topic is so important. This is Chris Gilbert. I was saying someone in a past presentation said that as a contractor, they've had temporary gas water heaters to make do after a failed gas water heater until wiring can be done for a heat pump water heater. And I had also suggested putting in a 120 volt electric resistance tank as a temporary solution. Any thoughts on temporary solutions?
Yeah, so I've heard a couple. One is, I've heard of a company around here that actually carries old gas water heaters on their truck just to provide a solution to bridge someone over to, when they can get the wiring run, et cetera. I've also heard electric resistance water heaters, those going in, the smaller ones. Yeah.
Okay, and I think at the very beginning you were presenting how to go about getting the 15-minute data, because it seems like there's way more power capacity if you study your actual use than if you do the highly conservative ground-up assumption from the NEC code. Can you speak a little bit more to like how to do that? There was also some chatter about whether or not PG&E would allow that strategy. When you were working in PG&E territory, what did you see?
Yeah, yeah, it's allowed. 220.87 absolutely is allowed. It's part of the NEC and the National Electrical Code. So how to get your 15-minute data. So my understanding is that some houses are wired, their smart meter actually, takes that measurement every 15 minutes, and other houses it's only every hour. And the NEC allows you to use the hourly data. I think you have to have, I'm not totally sure about this, don't quote me, Tom will know. I think it's 3 months, maybe instead of 1 month. There's some discrepancy there if you only have 1 hour data, but so some people just won't be able to get their 15-minute data. I don't know if it's possible to ask PG&E to change your smart meter so that you can get the 15-minute data, but the 1 hour data will work for the 220.87 calculation.
Okay, and did PG&E give you any like pushback, you're saying?
No, in fact, we taught that method at a PG&E class, and it's the 220.87, as I said, it's part of the National Electric Code. So I don't know. I haven't heard about PG&E giving pushback on that.
So sorry there, I was just making sure the right presenter next as you saw me calling around.
No problem.
So there's just so much on the chat over here. If you don't mind hanging out for a few minutes and trying to respond to folks, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure, we'll do.